Welcome back to another episode of Disruptive RX with Dr. Inderpal Randhawa. I'm Sean Andre, as always, joined by, I've been working on this, the Doctor of Disruption,
There you go. I like that. I
Dr.
like that.
Inderpal
Good to see you, my man.
Randhawa.
I got the best position next to you this time because we have two very special guests with us.
Yes, we do.
We are very fortunate to have with us the mayor of Long Beach, the seventh largest city in California, Mayor Rex Richardson,
Thanks a
and
lot.
his wonderful wife, Dr. Nina Richardson. And we had the wonderful opportunity of meeting you just about 6-7 months ago
That's
when
right.
you came and visited our facilities. And I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we love to talk about disruption in the areas that you both are working in.
Yeah, no, thanks. We had a great time visiting your facility, learning about what you do, you and your incredible team. And I'll tell you, since we've met, I've seen the impacts that you had on the community, people talking about the work you do. So you're certainly making an impact here in the city of Long Beach.
Thank you very much. Food allergy space, just briefly, is absolutely huge. You got about 25 million people in the U.S. Roughly 1 out of 10 people in the city of Long Beach has some type of food allergy, food anaphylaxis. What has been your experience with that space?
Yes, I could talk a little bit about that. Thank you again for having us today. So I would say I didn't grow up with allergies, but about 5 years ago, I discovered that I had some allergies. And so that's impacted my life greatly. So it definitely changed and disrupted kind of my flow
For sure.
of life. Yes.
You're one of the most common stories out there. So about 2/3 of the people who have food allergies in this country develop them after the age of 18.
Mm.
And so the foods that you're allergic to, at one time, were you able to eat them?
Yes, definitely. So I grew up eating bread, shrimp, sesame. Those are all things I'm allergic to. And so, yes, just one day, my body let me know I couldn't have those things anymore. So,
And at the Food Allergy Institute, what we do is we use this extremely disruptive form of technology.
Mhm.
You come in, you get your blood drawn, and we're running this through AI. The most beautiful thing about it is it will actually forecast when you're done with treatment, where you can consume all those foods again without restriction.
That's
wow,
incredible.
And we have this great number now. We're about 3 kids, or I should say, 3 kids and now adults, because we just started treating young adults, are reaching remission every single day,
Wow.
right here in the city of Long Beach,
life changing.
which is really awesome.
Yes,
So
thank you so
That's
much.
certainly disruptive.
that's
Right.
there. But one of the real reasons I wanted to develop this podcast and run this podcast was talk to experts in different fields about what disruption means, because I think it has kind of this negative connotation sometimes. I don't think it's always the case, but to me, disruption is about innovation, about seeing some evolution, some change to see things better. And it's kind of the opposite of status quo. So, Mayor, what are your thoughts on kind of
It-
some of this disruption?
I would agree, particularly in government. Government is good at building things.
Yeah.
Right. We build systems, we build structures and buildings, but we're not necessarily the best at pointing out where we make mistakes. And so community's good at dismantling, pointing out where the systems and the structures fail you. And they're really two sides of the same coin.
Hmm.
You can't have government without community. You can't have community pointing out the challenges without the builders, right? And so you have to open up the doors of government to allow community and voices in, and that is a natural tension. That natural tension triggers innovation and change, and ultimately, through that process, that iterative process, you get a better government, you get better systems, better outcomes to improve people. And we've seen it so many times. One example is you city worked so well to finally get your taxi cabs right. Right? How you regulate taxi cabs at airports and in your downtown, where they park, where they pull up, and then Uber's created. And it changes everything.
The gig economy.
Right. And so Uber is created and cities had to figure out, okay, now do we try to regulate Uber the way you regulate a taxi cab? Because it's completely disrupted now. Or do you deregulate taxi cabs to allow the market to work itself out and allow Ubers into airports and allow surge pricing with taxis? So it forced a public policy conversation that ultimately provided more options for people. And that was, and there are examples like that every single day of, when disruptive technology or disruption forces a public policy conversation.
And that's the beauty of public sector, private sector balance, right? That's
Right.
what's great about the United States. Um, uh, First Lady, when you look at this kind of concept of disruption and all the amazing work you're doing at Long Beach City College, and obviously all the success you've had previously, What do you see as far as kind of this idea of the next change of things, particularly in your work?
Sure. Well, I'll talk a little bit about the pandemic. That was a huge disruption in
Yes.
higher education. So there was a huge shift for students. Particularly, I work with international students. So students were in influx. Do I go back to my home country? Do I stay here? And as administrators, we were scrambling to figure out how to support these students. So going online during that time was a huge shift. And now coming out of the pandemic, we're left with trying to figure out new policies and change policies for our students to help support them. And so in my space, I definitely just try to support them as best as possible, so that that disruption that happened won't, they'll just be more successful going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting
Mhm.
because you mentioned the pandemic and
Mhm.
support, and we always talk about this how the Food Allergy Institute actually stayed open
Oh my
uh,
God.
from a
Yes.
supportive standpoint
Yes.
We,
for our patients.
we were the only outpatient organization in the state of California that did not close a single day. We
Wow.
built a tracking, testing, tracing system in 7 days. We're
Oh,
tech companies. We designed the whole thing
Wow.
and got the patients right back in. Interestingly,
incredible.
we have patients from all over the world. So the ones from
Mhm.
Australia could not come here because of
Right.
their
Right.
regulations.
Sure.
So it was an amazing challenge. But again, I think to me, that's kind of the next question I have, which is around leadership, right? Like
Hmm.
we got this whole generation of leaders. I think obviously we're not going to talk about, you know, elections and things of that nature, but really it's a question I have for millennials and Gen Zers. I look at it as a doctor and as a leader,
Hmm.
you know, how are these guys moving into the system? And what we're seeing is not as many of them are interested in medicine.
Yeah.
And you know, that to me is a little concerning. I want nice people taking care of me as I, you know, age up.
Right.
But you know, leadership, you know, where is that going and how do we make it better?
It's interesting that you say this generation, the next generation is demonstrating less interest in medicine. We find the same thing in government, in public sector,
There you go.
public service, where you have a generation who's dealing with um, rising housing prices,
Yep.
right? Much higher proportionally than when you and I were kids or young adults. They're dealing with rising student debt costs, higher proportionally than any other generation. They A secure retirement is not something that's on their mind right now. The pension systems that our parents had or that maybe we had when we started our careers are diminished. So there's no secure retirement. And so if we want if we want future generations to continue to adopt and look at civil service positions, we're going to have to change. We're going to have to adapt. The proposition, the compact with them has to change.
Mhm.
So we're dealing with that here in the city of Long Beach, and most governments are looking at vacancies and how do we get younger people to make a commitment, 5 years, 10 years of service, like the Peace Corps, like military. And I think the proposition is a little bit like this: if you give us 10 years of service in the city of Long Beach under public service loan forgiveness, your student debt federally is canceled.
Ah,
And because these are government jobs, they pay a prevailing wage with a union, you can afford housing, even to buy a home. And if you work for 5 years, you're vested in a secure retirement and a pension. All your problems are solved simply by giving yourself 5 to 10 years of service. Now, once you get in and you get that bug bites you and you're inspired and you get the commitment of living and working in the community you live in,
mhm.
making a difference in your own community, that's where that leadership, I think, that ownership, that trusteeship begins to develop because you have an opinion. You want to see your community be left in a better position than it was when you received it, right? So we have a lot of work to do in Long Beach. We've started a public sector um, program called Public Service Corps,
Okay.
where we take seniors and recent graduates from Long Beach State, Long Beach City College, Cal State Dominguez Hills. We give them hands-on, integrated educational experience through a fellowship, and they spend a semester. And this next year, it'll be a full year embedded in city government to see if if this is something that they're interested in. And we have a measure on the ballot this November
Mhm.
that actually gives them a preference on city hiring. So if there's a vacancy
Okay.
and you are studying engineering at Long Beach State
Mhm.
and there's an engineering position, you take that test. And at the end of that process, you still go through that competitive process, but you can get a 5 point preference because you went to school at Long Beach State or Cal State Dominguez Hills or Long Beach City College. You can also get a preference if you lived in the city because who better to serve our city and be that next generation of leaders and public servants than people who live here or went to school here in our Long Beach community.
I love it. It comes down to a basic idea. I mean, I talk to the young folks in my company, and we have hundreds of employees, and I'll ask them, "What do you dream about?" And
Right.
they look at me like it's the weirdest question they've ever heard, and they're like, "I don't really know. Why should I?"
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is with education up front, they are putting the time into education,
Yeah.
but then they just don't know kind of what's next. So I
What's
think this is
next?
an amazing incentive, right? It's the right idea to encourage them. Critical needs, we need to get them into certain
Mhm.
spaces, but the incentives are what counts.
But it's also disruptive because our civil service
Absolutely.
processes have been in place for a century.
That's right. That's right.
And for the most part, when people think about changing something that's been in place for a long time, there's resistance,
Yeah.
right? There's why would we change something that isn't broken? Well, the times demand it, right? When you have entire generations of people opting out, we have vacancy rates that are high. When you see that it takes more than a year to hire and you can't compete with the private sector, that creates that natural tension we talked
There
about.
you go.
That forces us to re-examine our systems to produce better outcomes. And then we define what those outcomes are. Well, for me, it's the value of expanding the opportunity, extending the opportunity of a government job that can get someone that secure retirement, the ability to own a home, raise a family with stability, and ultimately invest in their community. That's the value I'm looking for. And so it forced us to change our systems and have a really public conversation about what our values are as a city. Is it to maintain the status quo, or is it to open up the doors of government? And that's an example. People may not see it, but it's the impact of the pressure, external pressure, forcing innovation.
Absolutely.
That's really interesting. So when we hear about Grow Long Beach, you
Yeah.
really do. It sounds like you really do look at it from a disruptive standpoint. Is that true?
That's right. I mean,
Okay.
as a mayor, it's my job, and I try to cast my vision out to at least 10 years,
Yeah.
right? And when I came into office, my youngest daughter was in kindergarten, and I projected forward and said, okay, if the good people of Long Beach elect me to 3 terms, that's 12 years, which means she'll be graduating high school by the time we're finished. What Long Beach are we creating? What challenges are we overcoming that we're not passing on to future generations? How are we creating those opportunities for that generation, my daughter's generation? That forces us to really think big. And when we talk about Grow Long Beach, it's an answer to a problem
Mhm.
that Long Beach has had an oil-based economy for a century. 100 years ago in 1923, we're the fastest growing city in America because of an oil boom. Uh, Entire towns would develop around the discovery of oil. That's what that whole movie "There Will Be Blood" with Daniel
That's
Day
right.
Lewis was about. Whole
Yep.
town would be developed. Well, that was Long Beach a
Yep.
century ago. And today we've seen the benefits. We've also seen the challenges. And when you see the effects of climate change, extreme rain, extreme weather events every single year, more dependency on lifeguards, swift water rescue teams because of the swells and all the challenges we see every raining season, and the changing legislative environment around oil production makes the revenue we receive from oil not secure anymore for us. So we shouldn't be funding our police officers, our firefighters, our lifeguards, our after school programs, our libraries based on that funding anymore because it may not be there tomorrow. And so it really forces us, if we want to continue to deliver quality services that residents depend on, 6, 7 day a week libraries, the things we care about in Long Beach, then we have to grow new revenue in a way that is sustainable.
That's right.
So that means investing in new industries that show promise, like biotech and biomedicine,
Yep.
like the Food and Allergy Institute, like space. We're one of the fastest growing space clusters in America. Like clean technology. We just announced Ford Motor Company is bringing their clean tech campus, all their research and development to develop a whole new line of electric vehicles here in the city of Long Beach. Right, that's bringing hundreds of jobs. Like Vast Space is building a space station. They're on track to achieve 800 jobs. They've only been open for 18 months
Wow.
in Long Beach.
Wow.
Those are the industries that will help us to create a more balanced, more stable future and environment for our city. And the other part about that is fun. To be able to design a new economy, to consider what makes tourism sustainable. How do we bring more people to our city for concerts and events?
That's right.
Right? I mean, that's the fun part of government. So Grow Long Beach is really about looking at this challenge and getting ahead of it, right? Getting ahead of it by investing in those growth industries that will ultimately leave the city in a better position than it was when we came to it.
It's the innovation momentum, right? Like momentum is there. I think it takes strong leadership like yourself that allows this to be an attractive place. I've lived in Long Beach for over a decade.
Mhm.
My kids, go to international baccalaureate school because I really feel like it's
IB,
important that they get this type of experience.
absolutely.
And I think, it really is a kind of a basic thing. We've spent the last 20 years becoming a global economy.
Right.
Everything's globalized. Now everyone thinks it's deglobalizing. But I think obviously with technology, the chance of that happening is pretty slim. I mean, we're
Yeah.
all interconnected.
Right.
But I think with international students, particularly, Dr. Richardson, how do you see their kind of energy and how they feed into like a school system like Long Beach City College?
Yes, I love my students. They are phenomenal. And I just came back from Cambodia, so we
Oh wow,
opened a recruitment center in
awesome.
Phnom Penh for LBCC, and I was just so blown away by how everyone knows at least three languages. So I feel like we're a little behind here in the U.S. So they come to us well versed in and globalized already. So I feel like they're teaching us more than we're even teaching them at times. So it's
Well,
been
did
pretty
did
good.
you know that the largest number of Cambodian
Cambodian.
diaspora is
That's right.
here in the city of Long Beach?
I
It
did, and
really
I was
is.
about to ask First Lady about that. Was it important to you to make that trek to Cambodia, knowing what Dr. Randhawa just said?
Absolutely. So 22% of our international students at Long Beach City College are from Cambodia. So
That's
that
awesome.
was definitely
Wow.
a market that we wanted to hit first before we moved on. But we have actually 89 students from 34 different countries. So
Wow.
very diverse at Long Beach City College. Yes.
And there's an intersection between that and how we're attracting companies to the city.
That's
The
right.
number, we brought together site selectors. These are folks that help companies choose where to build their headquarters, their manufacturing facilities. So they consult with these companies. So we brought them out to Long Beach to give us an honest assessment. Who is our rival? Who are our rivals? What are our challenges? What are our opportunities? And the feedback came back, well, your rivals you're not competing with LA, they're your neighbors. You're competing with Austin, you're competing with, Phoenix, Denver.
Yeah.
Those are the cities that are really focused on the same clusters you're focused on. But the reason that you are excelling and you're one of the fastest growing tech sectors in America, the biggest reason is talent.
There we go.
Groups like Long Beach City College, um, your diversity of your talent, the way anyone from any walk of life can come to Long Beach and fit in, right? Those are the things that maybe you won't necessarily receive in those areas. And sure, some of those areas have it going on. Phoenix is hot, but Long Beach is cool.
I like
Well
that.
said. It's interesting. I talk about this concept of blended talent a lot. And I feel like this is the change of education that's happening. I mean, I'm an older guy now, but, I have 5 board certifications. I decided to go down that route. It wasn't easy, but I really like the idea of studying all these different areas together and how they fit. And I felt technology just makes that better. I was reading some statistics on now undergrads, college students now, how many of them are really going after these dual or triple type major areas. So we have this young generation of folks who are just crossing everything over, which is the future of everything, probably, right? So it's that kind of innovation that you're talking about that is going to attract talent, right? And how
Right.
public private sector balances these things is flat out, the way to get there. Question then. So given that you're generating all kinds of momentum here in the city,
That's right.
and yet we don't necessarily see it at the state level, we don't see it at the government level, US government
Mhm.
level. What are your thoughts on that? How can that spark some sort of light?
So that's not new. So that trend's called localism. And what's happened is you've seen federally um, you've seen partisan gridlock
Yeah.
take place for 30 years, where issues that you'd see federal leadership on transform, to impact issues in cities, you really haven't seen that leadership on in recent history. And so cities have stepped up on issues that they traditionally haven't had to lead on. There's a growing mandate, growing list of responsibilities for cities. Homelessness, um, economic inclusion, this concept, even guaranteed income, born in a city, right? These are typically services or programs that the federal government has led. And cities are now putting the front door on federal and state programs. When
Mhm.
people think about workforce or access to food, we cities had never really done food security work. That was a county function. During the pandemic, it was cities that were, organizing food distributions,
That's
popping
right.
trunks, and organizing lines of vehicles, right? And so We are the fastest service delivery model. People count on their cities for an expanded list of services, and we're playing a bigger role. And it's evidenced, the Biden Harris administration appointed mayors to
Mhm.
virtually everything. Think about it. You had Marty Walsh as Secretary of Labor. You had Secretary Pete.
Mhm.
Uh, Mayor Pete became Secretary of Transportation. Marsha Fudge, a mayor, became Secretary of HUD. You had Mitch Landrieu, infrastructure czar, was the mayor of Louisiana of New Orleans.
Mhm.
Um, so mayors, because they understand how to get the job done, they're playing an expanded role here.
That's
So
right.
that's really the shift that we're beginning to see. Mayors leading national conversations. Mayors bringing people together to find solutions and innovate. And that's what's happening here in Long Beach.
Makes a lot of sense. You're the CEO of a
Right.
huge city, and I think, like I always tell folks, it's the same issue. You can't, why is it so hard to find a coach in the NFL? Why is it so hard to find a coach in the NBA?
Yeah.
There's just not a lot of people who've had that experience and frankly, the wherewithal to make it happen. And I think that's an amazing, amazing example.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the thing. In a city, you have talent, you have your businesses, you have your residents, your educational institutions. We're all a part of this special tapestry,
Yeah.
right? And mayors are positioned to look at the whole picture and see everyone as an asset based framing.
Yeah.
See how we can work together to overcome challenges. And if it works here, I like to say Long Beach is small enough to be nimble, but at 500,000 residents, we're big enough to pay attention when we get it right.
That's right.
And when we get it right, a lot of times it influences the whole county, which is the largest county in America with 10 million residents. And then in effect, and then it influences the state. And as goes California, so goes America. So we've seen instances where, during the pandemic, we stepped up and provided sick pay and hero pay for workers in pharmacies and grocery stores
That's
when
right.
we couldn't find toilet paper. Putting recall and retention rights out when hotels were closing down. We were the first cities to step forward and say, when that hotel opens up, you're guaranteed your job back. Or if it goes out of business and turns into something else, you got to retain that workforce. All of that started in Long Beach. These things went statewide. Sick days is statewide law now,
That's right.
right?
That's
And
right.
all of that began in Long Beach. So that's sort of what's unique about having a city. It's a microcosm of America.
That's right. Well said.
Well said. It's interesting. We saw you all over the TV at this year's DNC, and I think we were maybe waiting on a shout out. Didn't happen, but it's okay. We won't hold that against you. But is there something I want to hear about your experience there? Is there something that you took away from this year's DNC that you can
Right.
bring back to the city of Long Beach?
I will tell you, it wasn't my first DNC. My first time going to the Democratic National Convention was 2008 in Denver for Barack Obama. And I wasn't an elected official. I was maybe 24 years old. I had braces, and I just remember the energy and the optimism and the hope. And I will tell you, I it felt reminiscent of 2008 in many ways. And I remember just watching the Obamas on stage, put it in perspective for people because they've been out of office for some time now, right?
Mhm.
For 8 years, and they put it in perspective for people, and they were really speaking to America about the job that we have to do. And then you saw Kamala Harris and Tim Walz come out and really put some points on the board. That's what I'm most excited about. It's not necessarily only about stopping someone from entering office, but putting some wins on the board. They're talking about a national opportunity agenda, right? When I came into office, my agenda was the Opportunity Beach agenda. We're speaking the exact same language about getting people into homes to buy homes again, right? About small businesses having $50,000 to go out and pursue their dreams. That is what we need right now. People need a shot. I believe if given the opportunity, there's nothing people can't overcome, right? And I remember when I was 25 years old and President Obama had just won, he put forward $8,000 tax credit for first time home buyers. I took advantage of it. I became a homeowner at 25 and I used FHA, which is a federal program, to buy my first home. And I've said for a long time that I think the federal government, FHA was created many years ago, and FHA, was 1973 or something, was Fair Housing Act.
Right.
And it's been a while since we've seen a national effort around home ownership,
Yeah.
and that we need to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And here we are, and they're proposing $25,000 down payment assistance, an entire effort to build 3 million more homes. That's the kind of leadership that we need to really get that generation we were talking about
That's right.
bought in
That's right.
to thinking about their future again, their economic future, and having them invested in what actually happens in America. And so that's why I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic about the opportunity to finally put points back up on the board.
I look at it as communications and dreams, right?
Right.
And in the food allergy space, like, when I started this work almost 20 years ago, I was ultimately shocked at how many people would travel amazing distances. I'm talking
Right.
about folks who drive from Mississippi out here, every 10, 12 weeks, bringing their kids back and forth
Hmm.
just to get to that point. And what would happen is I would have to hear their communications and understand, what are your needs? How can we help you get to the finish line? We want to achieve success for your child just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And that fed their dream, right? And
Right.
ultimately, I think what we all are looking for is that these young folks have an opportunity to dream, have that answer to that question when I ask it. But I also don't hear communication from them as much,
Yeah.
which is also interesting because I mean these are the folks who live and breathe in our city, and how much do we hear from them? How much do they communicate? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, and what can we do to maybe improve that?
Well, I think partnership with educational institutions is key. I mean,
Yeah,
that they work with generations of young people who I mean, the fact they step foot on a college campus already is a qualifier that they're thinking about the future,
that's right.
right? And so Long Beach has always had this history of supporting and partnering with our educational institutions. The Long Beach College Promise, where every student at Long Beach Unified, when you graduate, you get 2 years free
Yeah,
at Long Beach City College. Or if you meet the minimum standards, they save you a seat. They hold you a seat. You get guaranteed admission at Long Beach State. We're taking it a step further. We have common challenges on housing. We have a partnership where we're exploring housing solutions together called the Long Beach Housing Promise, because that is something that we're all invested in, right? Like students do better when they have secure housing,
that's
right?
right.
When they're not housing insecure. Um, that's families in K-12. That's college students as well, right? And now we're exploring on the ballot. We have the Long Beach Jobs Promise, which again creates a preference. First city in America to do this. That you went to school here, you have been educated here, you know a little bit about our community. Those first few years out, let's give you an advantage on public hiring, right?
That's right.
To be the next generation of civil engineers, firefighters, refuse operators,
Yeah,
just simply because you are connected to our local community. You've learned about our community by attending, going to college at Long Beach City College or Long Beach State, and that's an opportunity that people have to actually cast a ballot and vote on, right? So then it brings the entire community in to make a decision: is this something we support,
that's
right?
right.
And so it really just comes down to the creating those seamless pathways for young people to really envision their future and pursue it. Because it's hard when, let's say, you're a first generation college student like I was,
Hmm.
right? You don't know what the next step is.
That's right.
I was fortunate because I had mentors. I went to college and became student body president. I was always looking for what's next for me, right? But you shouldn't have to be um the exception, right? It should be the path should be made clear for everyone to know this isn't a real opportunity for me because I invested in my education,
That's right.
because I am committed to public service.
That's right.
This is a real pathway with where I can have a secure retirement, own a home, raise a family with dignity.
Yeah, I love it. I think these are the critical elements, right? Because
Yeah,
ultimately, I go back to communication. I feel like, I don't want to sound like an old guy, but it's like, the social media thing is part of it,
yeah,
but it's also something that's not going away. I
it's
mean,
not.
the whole reason we are doing this podcast is just to improve our ability to communicate
Yeah,
and how we get information back from individuals. It's got some drawbacks, but overall, it does have an ability to drive ideas.
yeah,
But it goes. I think you brought up a great point of mentorship. I mean,
yeah.
I grew up and had lots of mentors. My wife and I sit on the YMCA board here in Long Beach, and
Which one?
which is Los Altos,
Okay.
close to us. But like support and try to drive mentorship. But it's the same kind of thing. It's like, are we getting enough young folks trying to really follow that through? And perhaps they're just not getting the experience.
Yeah.
You know?
We believe in mentorship,
Yeah.
big time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like um like I mean, Nina, you're a bigger
Yeah.
you're a pretty big
Yeah, I
proponent on.
definitely started a mentorship program in every role I've been in. So right now I have a mentorship program that I started for international students because they need that guidance once they come in. They need a lot of support. So The current international students will mentor the first year international students as well to help guide them. So it's a great model. You have to have that for young folks coming
Do you
in.
feel like it continues on? Do you feel like these younger folks then who get are the mentees, they eventually kind of continue on
Yes,
that?
they pay it forward.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen that for sure. Now that I've been there 2 years, that cycle, yeah, they tend to give back, which is wonderful. That's what we want, right? We want them to be invested and give back.
And we went to college together.
Oh,
So
Yes,
okay.
we met
we
in
had similar
undergrad.
mentors.
Yes,
We had similar
yes.
mentors.
All right.
We
All
went to
right.
Cal State Dominguez Hills together.
Okay.
We were in student government. And some of the staff,
Mm,
you know, Guy Witherspoon, Shamshad Alimbu,
mhm,
they were our mentors.
mhm.
They still check in on us and
That's
our
cool.
They
kids.
will, yep, they
It
sure
is.
Isn't
do.
that
I
cool?
mean, we didn't date in college.
Yeah.
Yep.
We didn't date in college.
Later in life.
Yeah, yeah.
You
She
you met
didn't give me
again.
the time of day.
Yeah.
She didn't
Is
give me
this
the
a
time of
different
day.
episode?
Yeah, it's a
Different
different,
episode.
different
Okay,
episode.
just wanted to
Different.
check.
But back then, I wasn't, Mayor Rex Richardson. I was still figuring things out. I was student body president. She was the homecoming queen.
All
Okay,
right.
same time, and we were not dating. There's a photo of us taking a picture together as student body president, homecoming queen. Didn't know I was taking a picture with my future wife. Had no idea.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
And now look at you both.
yeah,
And the rest is history.
right.
This is great. I know you have to run. One last quick question. There was a story done on us recently where one of our patients flew 71 times back and forth for treatment. And so it was JetBlue, and our patient had this t shirt on that said Food Allergy Institute.
Oh
That
wow.
did so much for us. What will 2028 do for the city of Long Beach?
Ooh, that's a good question. So Long Beach um, has a beautiful waterfront.
Yes.
This legacy of people from Long Beach going out and shaping the world, from Billie Jean King, who practiced tennis up in North Long Beach at Houghton Park as free tennis lessons,
Yep.
city program, and went on and shaped Title IX and influenced gender equity in sports. You got Snoop Dogg, who started from Central Long Beach at a very difficult period in Long Beach history, and is now a global ambassador, and was Team USA's uh, spokesperson or
Yeah.
mascot, and carrying the torch. And I think it really says something about Long Beach, the character, the soil, people who come here, who come from working class roots, and go off and shape the world. And the opportunities that we provide here, even with space, like we built space stations in Long Beach, we built
Yeah.
rockets and all of those things. Young people right now from Long Beach schools can go and work and shape international, actually galactic, right, technology, and influence the world. You have a port that is the cleanest port in America. In the last 2 months, has moved more cargo than any port in the United States, and folks locally can go and work and influence the international economy. What does that? Why does that? What does that have to do with 2028? Well, 2028 is really an opportunity for Long Beach in many ways to come out of the shadows and demonstrate to the world what makes it special. And we have an opportunity. Back in the 1930s when we hosted the Olympics, we had a few events.
Mhm.
84 we had a few events. Well, now we'll have more events than 84 and 32 combined.
All
Right? Will be a major aquatic center with events like the triathlon and marathon swimming and water polo, aquatic swim, rowing, sailing. We're up to possibly 9 Olympic events and possibly 8 Paralympic events. So we're talking about potentially up to 17 events over a 8-week span of time, where the entire world will be here in Los Angeles for an incredible experience. They'll be in Inglewood for opening closing ceremonies in basketball. They'll be in Los Angeles for track and field, and they'll be in Long Beach for events that you can't hide it inside of a venue. You're going to be outside in the community. The backdrop will be our beautiful Long Beach waterfront.
There you go.
So that's a huge opportunity for us
Yep.
to really demonstrate what we care about, to demonstrate the values of Long Beach, the cultural tapestry, our diversity, and to give people a great experience to where they want to come back. Right? They'll never forget Long Beach. Right? That experience on the waterfront. They got a little sample of it, a little taste of it with the closing ceremony. Right?
So that
We worked with LA 28 to highlight Long Beach, and we had Snoop and Dre and Red Hot Chili Peppers and
Billie Eilish.
Billie Eilish,
Yeah.
and and it was a beautiful day. Folks got to see a little bit of Southern California, And that's the reality. That's what you get with Southern California. You get diversity. You're gonna have a beautiful waterfront. We're gonna have a great time in 2028. There will certainly be beach parties in 2028.
I'll be there.
Good, good.
Yeah, Lord willing.